My name is Peter Walker. So let me turn the page now over to what's going on between Xi and Biden and the summit. If you go back to US-China relationships, it was really, from my point of view, relatively positive until COVID hit the US. When COVID hit the US, Trump made a lot of very fundamental blunders. He basically underestimated it dramatically. And when that became apparent, he was very broadly criticized in the media. So he made a tactical decision to pivot away from COVID and distract everybody by focusing on China as the enemy. So the story that he basically planted was one that said China stole our IP, and that's how they got ahead. They stole our jobs, and they're rapidly catching up with us economically because of what they've been able to do to undermine the US. And so, shortly after he went down that road, the whole relationship, predictably, between China and the US deteriorated pretty dramatically. So, it got to the point where we went through a number of years during COVID where there was almost no personal interaction at senior levels between the leaders of China and the leaders of the US. That's what the summit is all about, is to get direct communications going again. So let me go to the summit itself and give you a couple of perspectives on it. The first one, I think, is that based on everything I've read so far and everything I've seen, I think the summit is regarded at this point as a pretty big success. Going into it, expectations were low. Everybody who knows China and knows the US knows that it was not going to be a breakthrough with grand announcements. It was going to be something less than that, with the heading of let's just get dialogues going. If you look at what's happened so far, I think the good news is that both Xi and Biden are saying the same thing. They're saying it's been constructive, it's been candid, and it's laying a groundwork for a lot more communication. And the importance of that is if you don't have the leaders directly communicating with each other, what happens is people who are not that knowledgeable, and especially the media, basically take control of the message. And the message winds up being a lot more negative than it ought to be. So I think apart from the tone that was very constructive, and I think has laid the groundwork for a lot more summits like these, not just at the top to top level, but at lower levels as well. And there were also a couple of very tangible things that came out of it. There's been a lot of concern, I think, on both sides that without military to military close communications, when you have near misses, and whether it's planes that are connected that are in the same space, or whether it's boats that are basically within collision range of each other, you need to have a fail-safe system where both sides can talk to each other, cool things down, and basically defuse the situation. And I think there was real progress and agreement that that was an important step forward for both countries. If you look at why it was successful, I think there are a couple of things that are important. One is both Xi and Biden understand that the popular phrase of decoupling, if you go back a couple of years ago, was just totally unrealistic because the interplay and interdependencies between the US and China economically, and whether it's trade interdependencies or whether it's supply chain interdependencies, they're too deep, they're too strong, and they're not really replaceable. So I think both started with the idea that there has to be an opportunity to find win-wins in the non-sensitive areas that can help both countries' economy. So I think that was a very important start to creating the right mindset on both of the leaders' part, that they wanted to find opportunities for a win-win. So if you ask the question, what's it going to take to maintain momentum going forward? I think there are a couple of things that are important. One is the rhetoric on both sides has to remain constructive and positive, and it needs to be taking up more of the media time and attention. And so you need to be able to counterbalance that with positive message and also positive results. Both sides need to be able to point to real solid agreements, real solid progress that people find credible. And I think the other thing that's starting to open up is the recognition that an area ripe for this kind of dialogue is climate control. So I think we're going to start to see progress and win-wins and agreements, and the rest of the world is looking for China and the US to take the lead. So I think it's a great start, and I think that we're going to look back in another 3 to 6 months and say that that was the beginning of a shift in the tone of the dialogue towards a much more constructive, towards win-wins, and away from the negativity that has dominated the airwaves so far. Okay, thank you, and look forward to catching up on the next subject.